Has everybody read what Reverend Terry put in the bulletin for this month on the back? It's called The Elements of Consciousness. It's okay if you haven't. There's not a test. But it's really great stuff. And he has given me the topic within his topic this month of playing in consciousness. And Terry's my teacher, so I know he didn't just randomly select this topic for me. There's a lesson in it for me. And the obvious one is how little I've been actually playing lately and how much I've actually been stressing out and worrying and wondering if I'm really ready to be a minister and will I be able to panel and successfully complete the program, and maybe I'm just a fraud and I should just go back to building houses or something, you know. All of that stuff's been up for me, and I'm sure he's aware of that. And I also want to, I had that reading chosen that was read, and I realized it was typical Ernest, a lot of really mental stuff there and hard to follow. But the key line in there was life's play upon itself is what creation is. And I'm trying to discover in myself now, you know, what is the truth of me as a minister, and how do I release all this worry and this tension over it and my doubts about who I am and why the heck I think I should do this. And stuff is coming up here right in the end game that's just been really difficult to deal with. Had a friendship just go crazily south and went into a big grief and upset and anger over that, and I've in the midst of that I thought, oh, I can't possibly be qualified to be a minister. Look at all the emotional reaction I'm having over this situation. But as Terry has pointed out to me over and over again, you know, all your stuff's going to come up when you're a minister and you have your own church. And if you can, you know, deal with it now, it'll be great. Because you'll deal with it later if you don't, and you'll deal with it with an entire community of people, and the perfect people to push your buttons will always be right in front of you. I don't know how he knows that. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about anybody here. No, absolutely not. But yes, I still have some buttons, and they've really been pushed lately. And because I know it is true that I'm on this journey, and it is a journey that's going to result in me being a minister, and that this stuff is all coming up for a reason, I'm really putting that consciousness on it and allowing myself to learn from it and not just be completely dismayed. And in the process, I've had some amazing experiences, and I want to tell you about one of them. I was so upset the other day over this friendship thing, and I was remembering a trick I learned in the past when I had a lot of emotion, crying in the car. You know, nobody can see you and nobody can hear you. And I was crying on my way home from work, and I got to a tunnel and I said, you know what, I need to scream. So I was screaming in the tunnel, just getting it all out there. And it was very cathartic, and it was a huge release. And I got home and I was just feeling empty and almost peaceful. And I put some music on. I put my MP3 player on random shuffle mode. And the song that came on was A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall by Bob Dylan. Some of you probably are familiar with that song, 1965. And I was brought all the way back to being 10 years old and listening to that song. And remembered that in my mind I had created this entire landscape based on that song. All the imagery in that song was there inside me, and it all came forth as I listened to it at the age of 55. That was all created by my mind way back then. And I said, wow, what is so special about this song for me? Well, the other thing that's not an accident today is that it's Father's Day. And I do want to wish you all a happy Father's Day. But I want to wish myself a happy Father's Day, and that's because I did not have a father growing up. And I've always thought of that as a lack in my life. But there's no such thing, according to this, as lack. So what is the truth? The truth is that I raised myself and I did a darn good job, and so I'm going to wish myself a happy Father's Day. And that's why this song is so significant, because it starts right out saying, "Where have you been, my blue-eyed son? Where have you been, my darling young one?" And then it begins each verse with that. It says, "What did you see, my blue-eyed son? What did you see, my darling young one?" And then, "What did you hear, my blue-eyed son? What did you hear, my darling young one?" That phrase I bonded with. I bonded with the idea that there was this welcoming presence that would say, "Where have you been, my darling young one?" and welcome me home. And even though I knew that that was never going to happen with a real father in my real life, it just was never going to happen. But I think that was really a place in my childhood where I began to create myself as my own father. And, of course, Spirit as my own father, what Holmes and Jesus and many others have referred to as the Father within. And that night the other day when I was listening to that song and having that experience, after having that other experience, I really got in touch with that. I really felt like what I've been talking about and studying and trying to learn about the true self, the inner self that is God expressing as the individual. I had that. I had that for a few hours that night. I just was in this place where I just knew that. And I realized I really haven't been in that place. I've been a practitioner and I've been studying to be a minister, and I really haven't authentically, consciously opened to that place at all before in that complete way. And I'm so glad I finally did. I haven't been able to stay there, but I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it. So everything that's come along in the days since, I've just said, there is this truth inside me. I can't quite get there right now, but I know it's there, and I've actually experienced it now. So this talk so far is not much about playing in consciousness. It's really about what is preventing me from playing in consciousness. I remember being a kid. I remember my wild imagination and how I could hold a little airplane and fly it through the air, and there would be the whole world below me. What an amazing thing to be able to just have that imagination, and how in adult life that kind of gets pushed aside, and I get focused on what needs to be done next and how am I going to accomplish it. What did I do wrong and how can I fix it, and what is somebody else doing wrong and how can I fix them. So Terry is really inviting me to let that stuff go and find the essence of me that knows how to play, knows that spirit and creation actually are play, and that if I simply let myself be aware of that, I will be in the play instead of outside of it. At the same time, consciousness studies has brought me closer to understanding the law that was talked about in here of cause and effect, and that what I put in it is what I get out of it. And I've used that positively and created a lot of opportunities for myself, and then fallen into this pattern of saying yes to way too many things because they're all so fun and exciting. And something always, when you say yes to too many things, it means you're going to have to say no to some other things, and sometimes it ends up by default, not something you chose to say no to but simply didn't have time for. And I can see over the past couple months what has suffered a lot is my own spiritual practice. The time that I spend with myself just meditating and praying has been squeezed, and I think that's allowed for some of this struggle to show up. A lot of that can be avoided when I remember to pray and remember to meditate and sit back and listen and contemplate. Over and over I've heard this phrase that comes from the Bible, but it's an idea that's as ancient as anything. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all else shall be added unto you. Having a regular practice, and I haven't abandoned it or anything, but making sure that I really deepen within myself, that is the turning to seek the kingdom, it's turning to God. all the stories that Ernest tells and Jesus tells and Rumi tells explain that the second you turn to God, God turns to you. Not that God was ever turned away from you, but that action in consciousness creates that connection, and the flow of life becomes conscious for you. This thing that Terry has in here briefly describes the Jungian approach of the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, how important that was as a modern understanding of our psyche. It's interesting to note that the conscious mind really can't pay attention to very much at a time. They say it's like 5 to 7 things, and that's it. Whereas our subconscious or our unconscious pretty much pays attention to everything all the time and is able to somehow remember all of it. When we have unconscious beliefs that are operating our lives, it's difficult for the conscious mind to, by itself, change those things, just because of the enormity of the subconscious, how much it has at its disposal to operate these beliefs in you. We have to call on God if we're going to be successful in changing those beliefs into something positive that supports us. And we will do it because if we don't do it consciously, the pain that results will push us into it anyway. This is the experience I just had last week. The pain pushed me, but it pushes you until, I think Karen Drucker said this, the inspiration begins to pull you. And I feel like I've made it over that hump now, and inspiration is starting to pull me. And I'm starting to remember what I've learned and what I've told others over and over again about love and how it is the universal healing power. But it's so loving that it doesn't come in and meddle with your life. It really has to be invited to pay attention to those places in you that you want healed. I have to say, love, please heal me. Please shine your light on this trouble that I'm having with this relationship, for instance, and these feelings that I have about it, and my beliefs that what someone's telling me might be true about myself that really isn't true. To let love in. Now, the person who discovers the truth of that and discovers the truth that there is an inner presence that is always there, that always supports us, is the person that is able to live the life that they want to live the life that is of love and is of God, and is always reflecting back to them that truth. So a little child that didn't have a dad was able to create an inner world where that was substituted for in a way that was actually useful and purposeful, because it is the nature of us to be creative. We are created in the image of the Creator. So we create, and I created a life for myself that got me through. I didn't do it consciously. I'm being asked now to be conscious of that I'm creating my life from that place of love and peace. There's this really hard idea in the Bible, and it's in the New Testament. It's in Mark, and it's in Luke, and it's in Matthew. They all say it. It's even in the Gospel of Thomas that didn't make it into that Bible. And it's this one that says, those that have shall get more, and those that have not, even that will be taken away from them. That sounds really harsh. If it's a metaphor, though, for being able to connect with the inner spirit and to be able to be the light of love, which we all have the ability to do, but it's the difference between using that ability and not using that ability that puts us in the have and get more, or have not and even lose that. And there's a really awesome song that uses that concept that's been helping me through life since I first heard it, by Billie Holiday, called God Bless the Child. God bless the child that's got its own. I don't know that Billie Holiday was a religious scientist or even a Christian. I don't know. But she grew up in a Christian culture, and she was aware of the Bible, and she was aware of the life of strife that she was living, and aware of this idea. And I think that in her own way, she applied it, at least in that moment, to come up with this amazing song.